My name is Darren Cole. I'm 31 years old. I work in corporate law, but not the flashy kind that ends up in movies. I deal with contracts, compliance, and legal loopholes, the quiet backbone of every company that wants to stay out of trouble. I live alone in a modest condo outside Dallas, and I don't say much at family events, not because I don't care, but because I learned early that my silence keeps the peace, or so I thought. The annual family barbecue is something I used to dread. It's less of a reunion and more of a stage. My parents, especially my father, never hid the fact that they preferred my younger sister, Clara. She's charismatic, beautiful, and has a way of lighting up a room. She studied marketing, bounced between internships, and somehow always got applauded for finding herself. Meanwhile, I graduated early, passed the bar on my first try, and never once heard my father say he was proud of me. At this year's barbecue, things took a turn I didn't expect, but not in the way you might think. It started with a joke. My uncle asked how many hours I was billing these days. Before I could answer, my dad cut in and said, "Darren, please. He just sits behind a screen pushing papers. It's not like he does anything useful." A few people laughed. Clara didn't. She glanced at me, unsure if I'd speak up. I didn't. I just took a sip of iced tea and let the burn of embarrassment settle in my chest like a quiet storm. That's when my mom chimed in. "You know, Clara's interviews are going so well. She's really going places." And there it was, again. I've learnt that silence speaks louder than arguments. And that day, I didn't fight back. I didn't point out that the very job Clara was pursuing, a top-tier marketing position with a global firm, required clearance through their legal onboarding department, or that the final step in her application was sitting in my inbox that very moment. I didn't say it because I wanted them to finish their show. I wanted them to feel bold enough to be careless with their words, not realizing that I had already become the one person standing between Clara and her dream job. Clara approached me later, after the burgers were gone and the sun had dipped behind the trees. Her voice was low. "Hey, I think the company you consult for just sent you something about my background check and NDA. It's just a formality, but HR said you have to sign off since you're overseeing their legal partnerships." I looked at her for a moment, really looked. She wasn't smug, not this time. She looked hopeful, desperate even. I nodded slowly. "I'll take care of it." But in my head, I wasn't just reviewing a document. I was rewriting the entire story. They called me useless. Now they were about to learn what being needed really feels like. I didn't sleep that night, not out of anger, that would have been easy. No, what kept me awake was something heavier, something slower. The realization that for years, I had been the silent backbone of a family that didn't even know I was standing upright beneath them. I thought about all the times I helped pay off Clara's credit card debt without telling our parents. The times I reviewed their tax documents, redlined their retirement plans, and even quietly dealt with the legal notice my dad received over a zoning issue. Not once did they ask how I was doing. My entire life, I'd been the reliable one, the invisible insurance policy, the fallback plan, when things got too messy. And somehow, instead of earning respect, that made me forgettable, or worse, dispensable. I wondered if that was the curse of being calm, stable, and self-contained. When you're the one who never explodes, they start to believe you don't feel pain. But I did, and I remembered everything. What hurt the most wasn't the words useless. It was how easily they said it. Like it had been waiting at the tip of their tongue all along. Like they had rehearsed it in their heads and just needed the right moment. And maybe they had. I realized then, the absence of praise is still a form of cruelty. It starves the soul slowly, quietly. But I wasn't a child anymore. I didn't need their applause. I just needed them to see the mirror I was about to hold up. Clara texted me the next morning. Just a thumbs up emoji and a link to a PDF. She didn't follow up with a call, didn't ask if I had time. It was assumed, expected. I opened the file. It was her final clearance form. The same one that had a section marked pending legal department authorization. My name sat beneath the title like a quiet watermark. They didn't know it, but I had more power in this moment than any family dinner could erase. I didn't delete the form, I didn't sign it either. I bookmarked it. And then I opened another file, one I had kept stored away for a while. It was a proposal for a restructuring plan within the company's marketing compliance division, Clara's division. And that plan, it had loopholes only I knew about. Ones I had created to track contract inconsistencies. Ones I could use without ever saying her name. But I wasn't going to ruin her. That's not who I am. I wasn't raised to destroy, I was raised to disappear. But disappearing didn't mean surrendering. It meant stepping out of their line of sight, just long enough to make them wonder what they were missing. This time, I wouldn't vanish. I'd make them squint into the silence and realize it wasn't empty, it was full of everything they never gave me credit for. The first thing I did was nothing. Not out of laziness, out of design. I waited. I gave it 2 days, then 3. I knew how corporate onboarding worked. HR would follow up. Then her manager. Then someone higher up if they didn't hear back. Clara texted once more on day 4. Hey, just checking if everything's good with the form. No emoji this time, I replied with a simple, looking into it. That was it. 5 words, no emotion, no urgency. Let the silence speak. Behind the scenes, I began to pull strings. I requested a private review of all candidates entering through the firm's new marketing initiative, a formality that wasn't typically enforced, but still valid under legal oversight. I flagged Clara's entry as under review due to conflict of interest, never naming myself, never even attaching her file to it directly, just enough for the machine to slow down. Paperwork began to cycle, calls began to reroute, and slowly the engine that had welcomed her so eagerly began to stall. The silence did its job. I watched from a distance as Clara's excitement dimmed. Her posts on social media changed from "I got the job" to "can't wait for what's next" to nothing at all. The photo of her in front of the office building disappeared. I knew that look on her face when she passed me in the hallway at home. The forced calm, the tight smile, the silent question she was too proud to ask. Did you do something? But I never answered. I never admitted a thing. Meanwhile, I made moves of my own. I reached out to a former mentor at a different firm and submitted my credentials for a high-level compliance advisory role. I wasn't leaving out of spite. I was positioning myself where my influence could grow quietly, away from their gaze. Let them think I was idle. Let them believe I was pushing papers. I was building a bigger desk, one they wouldn't even be invited to sit at. I also contacted a journalist friend who ran a professional development blog. I offered an anonymous piece, "The Invisible Gatekeepers: How Legal Departments Quietly Decide Corporate Futures." It got traction, shares, industry buzz. Clara's HR director even reposted it. She had no idea the article was inspired by her stalled file, no idea that every line about misplaced trust in charisma over compliance was laced with my fingerprints. But the real shift didn't happen online. It happened at home. My mother called me one evening, unusually soft. "Clara's been feeling really down. She's not sure what's going on with that company. You wouldn't know anything about it, would you?" I let the pause linger before answering. "No, Mum. I just sit behind a screen." She laughed nervously, not sure if I was joking. I was. By the end of the second week, Clara's silence had turned into subtle desperation. She hovered around the house more, didn't wear makeup, cancelled brunch plans, and every time she looked at her phone, I could see the hope flicker, only to fade again. Still, she didn't ask me directly. Pride is a strange thing. It keeps people from knocking on the very door that could save them, especially when they once thought they were above you. I let her keep her silence. It was part of the lesson. Her fallback job had already expired. The marketing agency she interned for had filled the role. I overheard her on the phone trying to reconnect with a former manager, only to get a polite rejection. She wasn't used to being stuck. She was used to doors flying open with a smile. But now doors were locked, and the keys were held by the person she once watched get humiliated at a barbecue without saying a word in his defense. Meanwhile, the job I applied for, they hired me. Quietly, generously, no social media fanfare, no family updates, just a contract, a signing bonus, and the clean satisfaction of being wanted for my mind, not my performance. The new firm appreciated discretion. They didn't value showmanship, just results. And I delivered them like clockwork. Every day I sat at my new desk, in my quiet new office, knowing that while my family thought I was idle, I was building something they could never take apart. It was a Thursday when the shift truly happened. I came home late, dropped my keys on the counter, and found Clara sitting in the kitchen. Her laptop was open, but she wasn't typing. She was staring blank, unmoving. She looked up when I passed and said, barely above a whisper, "I think they're ghosting me." It was the first time she'd dropped the mask. The first time I saw the little girl behind all the charm. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just sat across from her and waited. Then came the words I never expected. Did you have to approve something?" she asked. Her voice cracked on the word you. I took a slow breath and met her eyes. "Yes," I said, calm as ever. And I didn't. No emotion, no anger, just truth. She blinked, her shoulders dropped, and for a moment I saw real humility. Maybe for the first time. She didn't beg. She didn't lash out. She just sat there in that still kitchen, realizing that the brother she had ignored at every dinner, the one her parents casually dismissed, had more power in that moment than all her charm combined. It wasn't revenge, it was revelation, and sometimes that's far more satisfying. Clara didn't speak to me for the next 2 days. Not out of anger. More like she didn't know how. For the first time in our lives, the dynamic had shifted. I wasn't the background anymore. I was the decision, the gate. And she didn't know how to process that. Our parents noticed something was off, of course. At dinner, she was quiet. Not scrolling through her phone, not bragging about upcoming plans, just eating slowly, thinking. And I knew what she was thinking about, how quickly it had all slipped out of her hands. My father made another passing joke. Something about how I was finally out of the house more often. This time I didn't smile politely or let it go. I looked up and said, "I took a new position. Senior advisory role at a different firm. Better title, better money, fewer distractions." My mother blinked. My father paused with his fork in midair. Clara's eyes didn't move. No one said anything for a moment, like the oxygen in the room had shifted. The truth is, I didn't say it to gloat. I said it because I was done pretending to be small just to keep the peace. I had shrunk myself for years to protect fragile egos, but now I was rooted. I was clear, and I wasn't going back. Later that evening, I received a short email from Clara's prospective company. They had officially closed the onboarding file. Candidate failed to complete the legal review process, it read. No drama, no explanation, just closure. I didn't delete the email. I saved it. Not for revenge, but as a reminder that power doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers through systems and choices, through presence and withdrawal. Clara never asked me to reverse the decision. She didn't try to spin a story, and maybe that was the only apology I was ever going to get. But that was fine. I wasn't doing any of this for her. I was doing it for me. For the boy who used to sit in his room and hear the laughter downstairs, knowing it wasn't meant for him. For the young man who got his law degree without a single proud phone call. For the version of me who stayed silent at the barbecue, swallowing humiliation with a side of potato salad. This wasn't about revenge. This was about letting the silence echo in the places where my voice had once been ignored. And in that echo, something broke. Not me, not Clara, but the illusion that I was ever powerless, that I ever needed their validation to become something solid. I had been solid all along. They just didn't look closely enough to see it. 2 weeks passed. Clara eventually moved on, or at least she acted like she had. I saw her polishing up her resume, sending out new applications. She became quieter around me, not with bitterness, but with a new kind of respect. Not the kind built on love or admiration, the kind built on realization, on consequences, on the understanding that I wasn't the safety net anymore. I was the wall she never saw coming. My parents never asked about what really happened, and I never told them. What would be the point? They'd crafted their version of the story for so long. Any deviation would sound like arrogance. Let them believe I was still the background character. It's easier to move in silence when no one's watching. But something in their tone shifted too. My father didn't throw around jabs at dinner anymore. My mother asked questions about work she used to skip right past. Small things, but I noticed. One afternoon, I received a letter in the mail. A handwritten note from Clara, just a few lines. She wrote, "I didn't realize how much I relied on being the favorite. You didn't need to say anything. I saw it. I'm sorry." I folded the note and placed it in the back of my desk drawer. I didn't need an apology, but I accepted it, quietly, like everything else I had ever handled. Peace, I've learned, doesn't come when people finally see you. It comes when you stop needing them to. I walked out of that family barbecue humiliated. But I didn't stay there. I rose slowly, steadily, in a way they never tracked because they were too busy watching themselves. And when the moment came to show them who I really was, I didn't raise my voice. I raised the standard. And that was enough. There's power in being underestimated, in knowing more than you say, in watching people step over you, then realizing too late that they were standing on ground you built. I live with that truth now, quietly, proudly. I no longer need to be invited to the table with fireworks and applause. I bring my own seat, my own silence, my own peace. And that's the thing about people who've been dismissed for too long. When they finally stand, they don't shout. They don't seek revenge. They become the calm you can't shake, and the storm you never saw coming.